Four more scary Craigslist horror stories, Scene 3. Story 1, The Pet Sitter. My name is Ryan. I was 24 years old, living in Austin, Texas, scraping by between warehouse contracts and picking up whatever side work I could find online. The Craigslist listing said, pet sitting needed 3 days, $200, cash 1 cat, 1 dog, water the plants, and collect the mail. Simple enough for someone who needed rent money. Badly enough. The address was in Round Rock, about 20 minutes north of my apartment. I confirmed with a woman named Sandra, showed up Tuesday evening at 6:30, and she handed me a key and backed out of the driveway without ever fully turning the lights on inside the house. Drop a comment and tell me if you have ever walked into a situation that felt wrong before you could explain why. Because I knew something was off within the first 5 minutes of being in that house. Stay with me. Sandra had said the cat slept mostly in the master bedroom and the dog had a crate in the laundry room. She had left a handwritten note on the kitchen counter with feeding instructions, 2 bowls near the refrigerator, and a bag of dry dog food in the pantry. I put my bag down and started looking for the animals. No dog crate in the laundry room. No litter box anywhere I checked. No pet food in the pantry beyond what appeared to be the bag Sandra had placed there herself, which I could tell because the grocery store sticker was still on the side and the receipt tucked under it was dated that afternoon. I went through the whole house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a finished basement. No animals, no animal smell. No hair on the furniture, no food bowls with residue, no worn patches on the carpet where a dog bed might have sat for years. Nothing that indicated any living creature had shared this space recently. I stood in the kitchen and looked at that handwritten note again. It was too neat. The kind of neat that comes from copying something slowly, rather than writing something you know by heart. The feeding schedule listed specific times down to the minute. 7:15 a.m., 12:30 p.m., 6 p.m. People who own pets do not write feeding schedules that precise because they already know the rhythm. They write it that way when they want something to look legitimate. I texted Sandra and asked where exactly the cat liked to sleep because I could not find it. She replied in 4 minutes and said it was probably hiding under the guest bed. I checked under the guest bed. Nothing. I texted back and said I still could not find it. She stopped responding. I sat in the kitchen with the lights on and thought through the situation clearly. I had a key to someone else's house. I did not know who actually owned this house. I did not know who Sandra was beyond a name and a Craigslist message thread. My car was in the driveway, my bag was on the floor, the neighborhood was quiet, and the houses on either side had their blinds drawn. I walked through the house one more time, but this time I was not looking for animals. I opened drawers carefully. The kitchen drawers had generic items, a few utensils, takeout menus, rubber bands. No receipts with a name on them, no prescription bottles, no personal mail. A kind of absence that is its own kind of presence. The master bedroom closet had a row of clothes hanging, but when I pushed through them, the back wall had no scuffs, no accumulated dust, nothing that said these clothes had been here long enough to matter. This house was staged, not for sale, for something else entirely. I picked up my bag, pocketed the key Sandra had given me, and walked out the front door. I drove to the end of the block, parked at the curb, and called the Round Rock non-emergency police line. I told them what I had found and what I suspected, which was that someone had paid a stranger to occupy a house that may not have been theirs to give access to. 2 officers went to the property that evening. The house had been listed for sale 6 weeks prior and was currently vacant, held by an estate. The listing agent confirmed no pet sitting arrangement had ever been authorized and that the key Sandra had given me was a copy of a lockbox key that had been reported missing 3 weeks before. Sandra's number disconnected the following morning. The Craigslist listing was removed within hours of my call. The estate's property manager confirmed that several small items from the home had been removed at some point during the vacant period. The working theory from the officer I spoke with was that Sandra or someone she was working with had used the pet sitting listing to place a third party inside the house as cover during a burglary window. Someone with a truck, parked in the driveway, lights on inside, moving around behind the windows. Nothing suspicious about that from the street. I was the cover, I just did not know it. I think about the people who might have answered that listing before me and actually stayed all 3 days. I think about what they were unknowingly providing to whoever Sandra was working with. And I think about the fact that if I had not gone looking for those animals in the first 10 minutes, I might have slept in that house for 3 nights and never understood what I was actually doing there. I still check every Craigslist listing against the property address now before I agree to anything. Public records show who owns a house. It takes 4 minutes. That is 4 minutes I will never skip again. Story 2, the photography gig. My name is Damon. I was 31 years old working freelance graphic design out of my apartment in Las Vegas, Nevada, in one of those dry stretches where the invoices slow down and the bills do not. The Craigslist listing said photography assistant needed no experience, required help setting up lighting and managing equipment for a 2-day commercial shoot, $250 a day cash. The poster said his name was Vincent and that the shoot was at a rented studio space in Henderson. I messaged him on a Wednesday. He responded within the hour and confirmed a start time of 9 a.m. the following Saturday. Tell me in the comments if you have ever taken a gig that started feeling wrong before you even got inside the building. Stay with me, because Vincent was not a photographer, and there was no studio, and I figured both of those things out about 4 minutes too late. The address in Henderson was in a commercial district tucked behind a Home Depot and a transmission shop. Low buildings, no signage on most of them, the kind of block that hums with small business activity during the week and goes completely silent on a Saturday morning. I arrived at 8:50 and parked in an otherwise empty lot. The unit number Vincent had given me was at the far end of a row of doors. No windows facing outward, no business name on the door or the wall beside it. I texted Vincent that I was outside. He replied immediately, "Come on in." Doors opened. I pushed the door, and it swung into a wide, dark space. Concrete floor, high ceiling, no lighting equipment visible anywhere. No backdrops, no stands, no rolling cases of gear. A few folding chairs against one wall, and a card table near the center with a laptop open on it. Vincent was sitting in one of the chairs. He was younger than his messages had suggested, late 20s, and he was not alone. A second man stood near the back wall, who had not been mentioned anywhere in our conversation. I said I thought we were setting up a shoot today. Vincent said, "Yeah, we are getting there, come on in," and closed the door behind you. His tone was easy. His eyes were not. They were moving between my face and the door behind me in a way that had nothing to do with lighting or equipment or anything related to a photography job. I did not close the door. I said I forgot something in my car and I would be 1 minute. Standard line. Calm delivery. I turned before either of them could respond and walked back out into the parking lot and let the door fall shut behind me. I walked at a normal pace to my car, started the engine, pulled out of the lot and drove 2 blocks before I stopped at a gas station and sat with my hands on the wheel. I had the address, or the unit number, and the full message thread with Vincent's number, and the Craigslist listing saved in my phone. I drove to the Henderson Police Department and walked in and told them everything, including that I believed 2 men were currently in that unit and that the circumstances of the listing were not consistent with any legitimate commercial photography operation. Officers responded to the location. Vincent and the second man were still inside. The unit had been leased 2 weeks prior under a business name that did not correspond to any registered entity in Nevada. Inside the space, they found zip ties, coiled rope, and a duffel bag whose contents the department declined to fully describe when they followed up with me. Vincent had a criminal record in 2 states. His Craigslist account had posted the same photography assistant listing repeatedly over several months using different email addresses and slightly altered wording, each time always in the same metro area, always targeting the same type of respondent. The detective who called me said I had made the right call not closing that door. She said it with a particular emphasis that made clear exactly what she meant. The door was the variable. Closing it was the thing that would have changed every outcome. I have not answered a Craigslist job listing since that morning. For supplemental work, I use platforms that require verified accounts and traceable payment. It costs more in platform fees. I have never once complained about the cost. The laptop on that card table was open to a blank email draft. I caught a glimpse of it when I was standing in the doorway. I have thought about what might have been typed in it before I arrived. I made a deliberate decision at some point to stop thinking about that. Most days that decision holds. Story 3, The Test Drive. My name is Nathan. I was 28 years old, a high school history teacher living in Portland, Oregon, and my 10-year-old Civic had finally given out in a way my mechanic said was not worth repairing. I needed a vehicle within the week. I found a Craigslist listing for a 2014 Ford F-150, 112,000 miles, asking price $7,500, photos showing a clean interior and no visible rust. The seller's name was Roy, and he lived out in Troutdale, a small community about 20 miles east of Portland, near the Columbia River Gorge. I messaged him on a Sunday, and he called me back within 20 minutes. Comment below and tell me where you are listening from tonight. And stay with me, because Roy had a very specific route planned for that test drive, and I did not understand why until it was almost too late. Roy was friendly on the phone in the way some men of a certain generation are friendly, unhurried, and conversational, asking questions about me before I had a chance to ask any about the truck. Where did I work? How long was my commute? Did I haul anything regularly or mostly highway driving? I answered because I wanted information about the vehicle. He said the truck had been his son's and that the boy had relocated out of state and left it with him. He said I was welcome to bring a mechanic if I wanted. That part settled something in me that should not have been settled so easily. I drove out to Troutdale the following Tuesday after school. Roy's property was several miles past the main commercial stretch on a 2-lane road with dense forest on one side and occasional glimpses of the Columbia River through the trees on the other. A long gravel driveway led up to a single-story house with a covered carport. The truck was parked in the driveway, dark blue exterior, reasonably clean. Roy came out before I reached the front steps. He was around 65 tall with a slow and deliberate way of moving that I read at the time as relaxed. He walked me around the truck and answered every question I had without hesitation. Interior in good condition, no significant rust under the frame. He produced a folder of maintenance records without being asked and handed it over while I was still crouched looking at the wheel wells. All of this was exactly right. All of it was designed to be. He suggested a test drive so I could feel how it handled at speed. I said sure. He settled into the passenger seat. I drove back down the gravel lane and turned onto the two-lane road heading east away from Portland. After about 2 miles, Roy said to take the next left, that there was a straight stretch, good for testing the acceleration. I turned left onto a narrow, unpaved road heading into the trees. No houses visible from the road, no other vehicles in either direction. Just gravel under the tires and forest on both sides, and the light dropping low under the canopy even though it was still mid-afternoon. I drove maybe a quarter mile and said I had a good feel for it and was gonna turn around. Roy said keep going a bit. It opens up ahead. I stopped the truck. I sat there and looked at the road in front of me and the trees on both sides, and the total absence of anything or anyone within visible distance, and I ran a fast and simple calculation. I was in a vehicle I did not own on an unmarked dirt road. I had not chosen, with a man in the passenger seat who had specifically directed me here, and the return route required me to drive back past him to reach the main road. I said I was going to head back, and that the truck was not quite the right fit. I said it without apology or explanation, and put it in reverse, and started backing toward the two-lane road. Roy said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "You sure it is real nice back there?" I did not respond. I kept reversing. The quality of his silence changed during those 90 seconds of backing up. I cannot describe it precisely, but I registered it the way you register a shift in air pressure before a storm. Something that had been held was being released into a different position. I got back to the two-lane road, drove back to his property, parked the truck in his driveway, and got out. I handed him the keys and said it was not quite what I was looking for, and thanked him for his time. He stood holding the keys and watched me back my car out without speaking. I filed a non-emergency report with the Multnomah County Sheriff that evening. I gave Roy's name, address, a description of the property, and the exact location and direction of the unpaved road he had directed me toward. The deputy I spoke with asked 2 clarifying questions about the road specifically. The way he asked them told me the road was not unknown to them. Roy's listing came down 3 days after my visit. A new listing for a different vehicle appeared under the same seller account 4 days after that. I bought a car through a dealership and paid more than I had wanted to. I test drove it alone in daylight on a route I chose myself, with a salesperson following behind in a separate vehicle. That is the only way I will ever do it again. The truck was a nice truck. Clean, well-maintained, reasonably priced, exactly as advertised. That is a part that makes it hard to explain. There was nothing wrong with the truck. There was only the road Roy knew about. And the way he said it opens up ahead, like he had been to the end of it before and knew exactly what that meant. Story 4: The Midnight Move. My name is Cole. I was 25 years old, working as a line cook in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 2 months behind on rent after a run of bad luck, and looking at every option I could find that would generate fast cash. The Craigslist listing said urgent moving help needed same. Night $100 per hour, must have own vehicle and be available by midnight. The poster listed his name as Greg. The pickup address was in the Uptown neighborhood. I texted the number at 10 p.m., got a reply within minutes, confirmed my truck could fit furniture, and said I would be there. Hit subscribe right now if you are new here, and stay with me, because what I helped load into my truck that night was not Greg's furniture, and the house we were emptying was not Greg's house. I want to say I had a bad feeling from the beginning, but that would not be honest. The truth is I was exhausted and behind on bills, and $100 an hour was enough to turn off the signals I should have been paying attention to. I told myself the late hour made sense, because people with regular jobs sometimes could not coordinate moves until after work. I told myself I had moved things for strangers before, and it was always fine. I drove to Uptown and arrived 2 minutes before midnight. Greg met me on the sidewalk outside a 2-story house on a residential block. He was heavy-set, wearing a dark hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He had another man with him, introduced briefly as his cousin, no name given. The house behind them was completely dark. Not a single light on in any room. I asked if the owners had already left. Greg said, yeah, they cleared out yesterday. We just need to get the last of the big stuff. He held up a single key on a plain ring and unlocked the front door without any hesitation. I followed them inside. The interior was dim lit only by the flashlights on our phones, because Greg said the electricity had already been shut off. We started in the living room. Nice furniture, the kind that accumulates in a home over years, rather than being purchased all at once. A large sectional sofa, a solid wood console table, 2 floor lamps, a television still in a mounted bracket on the wall. Greg and his cousin worked fast, significantly faster than anyone I had ever helped move before. The mechanical efficiency of people who want to be somewhere else very soon. We had made 2 trips to the truck before I noticed the first thing. On my 3rd pass through the living room, I picked up a framed photograph from the console table to wrap it and stopped myself. Greg had told me furniture and electronics only. He had been specific about that in a way I had not questioned at the time. So why was there a framed photo sitting unwrapped and unboxed in the middle of a room we had almost fully cleared? I looked at it in the beam of my flashlight. A family, a mother and father and 2 children and a dog standing in front of this house in what looked like late summer, the yard behind them still green. A totally ordinary family photograph taken by someone who lived here. I set it down and looked at the room differently. There were 2 pairs of shoes near the front door. A child's backpack hung on a hook by the stairs. A half-finished glass of water on the kitchen counter. The refrigerator, visible from where I stood, had drawings held up by magnets, the uneven, colorful drawings of a child maybe 6 or 7 years old. Nobody packs a house that way. You do not leave a child's backpack hanging on the hook when you move. You do not leave a glass of water on the counter. You do not leave your kids' drawings on the refrigerator. The only version of a house that looks like that is the version where the people inside it did not know they were leaving. I set down what I was carrying. I walked to the front door and said I needed to grab something from the truck, and stepped outside. Greg called something after me. I kept walking. I went to the end of the block and called 911. I gave them the address and told them I believed a burglary was in progress and that I had unknowingly been involved for approximately 40 minutes and was now standing at the corner of the block and would remain visible for responding officers. 3 units arrived in under 6 minutes. Greg and his cousin attempted to exit through the back of the house. They were stopped in the alley behind the property. My truck was in the driveway with 2 loads of that family's belongings in the bed. The house belonged to a family that had driven to Wisconsin for a long weekend to visit relatives. The key Greg had used was a spare the family kept in a small lockbox mounted on the back porch. A neighbor across the street told officers she had noticed my truck, but assumed it was a legitimate move. She had been close to calling, but had not yet decided to. The Craigslist listing had been posted using the Wi-Fi network registered to that family's home address. Investigators determined that Greg or someone connected to him had physically accessed the property prior to that night in order to locate the lockbox key and gain the network access needed to post the listing. I stayed on scene until nearly 5 in the morning giving my statement. I helped officers inventory everything in the truck bed. I had wrapped most of it carefully out of habit The same way I wrap things on any move even when I did not know what I was wrapping or whose it was. The family was contacted and returned early from Wisconsin. I do not know if they were ever told the details of how the evening ended. I hope the drawings were still on the refrigerator when they got home. I do not take cash gigs from Craigslist anymore. I work legitimate delivery routes through a verified app. I have seen listings since that night with words like urgent and cash and same night, and I close the tab before I finish reading the first line. $100 an hour sounds different once you understand exactly what you're being compensated for. Greg did not need my truck. He had a van of his own. He needed a person with a legitimate vehicle parked openly in the driveway of that house, moving through the lit windows, looking like someone who belonged there. He needed it to look ordinary from the street. For 40 minutes, I made it look exactly that way. That is the part that has never fully left me. Not the dark house or the fast hands or the shoes by the door. Just the fact that I was useful to him in a way I did not choose and could not undo. And that somewhere in a folder in a police report in Minneapolis, my name is listed under the heading of unwitting participant. Unwitting. That word did a lot of work for me that year. I'm not sure it was enough.